My name's Alan Mulholland, and behind me is Wave Rover, my 40-year-old, 25.5-foot long boat that I intend to sail single-handed.
Every great voyage needs great preparation, and there's a ton of work to be done to make this voyage a success.
She has new rigging. The chain plates, which originally were attached to the inside, are now attached to the outside, bolted through the hull. The doghouse, of course, with the iconic maple leaf. I decided to put the running lights, port and starboard, on the sides of the doghouse, and with the Yankee cut sail it gives great visibility. One of 3 solar panels, the other 2 located just over top of the quarters, and of course the wind vane self-steering. Put a little bench across the back of the push bed. It's one of the most comfortable places to sit when on watch. It's well protected between leaning back against the steering gear and also hanging on to the twin backstays. The rigging points are attached with loops, Dyneema loops, and the reason for that is I still need to test it out on the shakedown and find out where the best spot for the turning blocks will be. And then the hatch. Totally watertight. And I mounted the compass just above. These great big pieces of stainless are for the series drogue.
The provisioning of Wave Rover, including 60 homemade stews that Mrs. Wave Rover made for the voyage. It looks to me like we've got 6 months worth of provisions here.
It's Sunday, the 28th of July, 2019, and these good people have come out to help me cast off and wish me well.
This is the Mark III, my home-built wind vane design that will flawlessly steer Wave Rover 7,800 nautical miles over 105 days on the North Atlantic. On Wave Rover's second day at sea, fog rolls in, reducing visibility down to 100 yards. This fog will stay with Wave Rover for 3 days.
It's hard to tell in the video, but the whales on the outer edge of the pod are the largest. The whales that are approaching Wave Rover appear to be the smaller and perhaps more curious adolescent whales in the pod. I really feel blessed and honored to witness such a magnificent spectacle. Well, the wind has freshened once again, and it's blowing from the east, the direction that I'm trying to head. And again, I will have to hove to while I wait for the wind to veer to the south, or better still, the southwest. So what we're looking at is
about a 2.5-foot long split along the leech. Well, the repair of the jib is complete. Shortly after repairing the sail, the wind veers to the southeast, making it possible to sail close-hauled to the wind under reef jib and reef main. These conditions held for about 2 days and put me within about 70 nautical miles of my destination, the island of Flores. With the sun setting, after 26 days at sea, 1,500 nautical miles from Port Hawkesbury, Nova Scotia on the east coast of Canada, I arrived at my destination, the island of Flores in the Azores, the westernmost point of Europe. Well, it's now the 25th of September, and Wave Rover has been in the port of Azores on the island of Flores for almost 4 weeks. I've just been to see the port captain, and I've received my clearance to leave, and I'm bound for the port of Horta. It's an iconic port that sailors have visited. It's the destination that most sailors make when they're coming from the Caribbean back to Europe. And it's about 140 nautical miles from here. Now, I have a great weather window. The next 48 hours I have winds that will be approximately 12 to 15 knots from the right direction, from the southwest. So all that is great, and Wave Rover is in great shape. She's prepared, she's ready to go. The only little thing that's at the back of my head is yesterday it was reported that Hurricane Lorenzo is bearing down on the port of Horta. It's about 6 days out, so all that could change. In 48 hours I'll be in the port of Horta, all going well, and then I'll reassess and I'll see what the local experience tells me I ought to be doing to prepare. So it's a very fast-moving hurricane, and it's very odd to have a hurricane that's bearing down on the Azores at all this time of the year. So it's unpredictable. Anyway, the next time you see me or hear from me, it will be from the island of Falal, the port of Horta. Hello, folks. After 4 weeks of resting, it's great to be back at sea. It's great to shake the salt off the sails and get going again. Wave Rover has made landfall, just as the sun is setting, at the island of Fayal. We'll be heading around the southern tip and coming up the channel between the island of Fayal and the island of Pico. Wave Rover should be safely alongside in the Port of Horta shortly after midnight. Because Wave Rover is so small, the marina authorities put her in with the smaller day sailors and small recreational craft. Hurricane Lorenzo is approaching the Port of Horta. Now, this is something I've been watching for about the last 6 days. In fact, I've known about this hurricane since leaving the Port of Lages. Shortly after shooting this video, the emergency crews came by and evacuated us, saying that it was no longer safe to stay in this area. Wave Rover is leaving the Port of Horta. After what has just been a marvelous stay, Wave Rover is now bound for the islands of the Canaries, some 1,100 miles away. Good morning, Wave Rover morning report. It's the 8th day at sea, and last night we had fairly light winds. They were probably in the area of 5 to 10 knots, so we were only making about 3 knots, but we were continually going to windward, meaning that we're sailing as close to the wind as we possibly can, about 45 degrees off the wind, which also means that we're sailing into the sea. So the swell is a function of the direction of the wind usually, and we're sailing into that, which makes for a slightly rougher passage. Starboard beam. Now we'll go to the forward starboard port. And now the port, starboard port. That's probably a little bright. And now the port beam. And then looking aft on the starboard side. Looking aft on the port side. So what's on the menu today? Well, it looks like it's fish stew. So we have about half a pot of boiling water. There's a cup of rice in there. There's a chopped up onion. There's 3 cloves of garlic chopped up, 2 eggs, and later on I'll be adding a can of sardines and some spices. And I just want to show you how the stove, it's a Dometic. Right now we have it on very low. And you can see how it's gimbaled. Team Samba, Team Samba, Team Samba. This is the sailing vessel Wave Rover, Wave Rover, Wave Rover on 1-6. Over.
Yes, Wave Rover. This is motor vessel Team Samba. Go ahead, sir.
Team Samba, I have you on my AIS receiver at about 6 miles, bearing 250 from you. We have a CPA of less than 2 miles. I'm a sailing vessel under sail. I'm 8 meters and I'm difficult to see. Can you see my running lights? Over.
Moment, sir, moment.
Team Samba, this is Wave Rover on 1-6. Sorry about that, I was turning the alarm off. I have you, or rather I am on your port bow. It looks like our CPA has opened to approximately 2 miles. I will stand on. Over.
Yes, sir. I already saw you. You are in our port bow. You are in our port quarter now. And you will stand by. What's the attention?
I will stand on my course and speed. Our CPA is big enough. It's no problem to me at this point. Over.
Okay, sir. Stand by 1-6.
It's our 11th day at sea. It's shortly after sunrise, and Wave Rover is in a gale. Last night we had several contacts, and one of them gave me a great weather report and confirmed that we're in a gale, but also said that later today the gale should start to lift, and we should see an improvement by this evening somewhat. I can tell you right now, it's not as bad as it was last night. Between 2 and 4 in the morning, we were hit by just gust after gust after gust, and was laying Wave Rover on her side. Yesterday, probably around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it was obvious that the conditions were getting worse, and I dropped the main completely, and then we're now running under just the reefed head sail on a broad reach. We're about 150 miles from our destination, and I'm just about to head up on deck to make a minor adjustment to the Vane gear. So I'm going to bring the camera with me, and we'll try to get some video. These are the type of conditions that I tie off in, even in the cockpit. Normally I only tie off with my tether when I go forward to deal with the sails, but under these conditions I tie off in the cockpit. And I'll tell you why: because you get hit by rogue waves under these conditions. Just a couple of minutes before I started the camera, we got hit by one. The wave is running about perpendicular to the seas right now, and it's quite powerful, and it hits the boat, and it just hits the boat like a freight train hit the boat. Huge noise, lots of shaking, and you would think that there would be damage, but Wave Rover, being so small and well built, is sustaining these blows without any problem so far. Despite the sunny conditions, the seas and the wind continue to build throughout the day. Wave Rover right now is under just a reefed jib. The mainsail has been stowed completely. The conditions will overpower Wave Rover even with that small amount of sail up, meaning that I will have to come up with another way of controlling the motion of the boat. And in this case, I've decided to deploy the series drogue. Well, it's day 12, the morning of day 12. We're about 30 miles from Lanzarote, and we're about 40 miles from our port. In fact, we'd practically be there right now if it weren't for this storm that we're in. Last night, conditions got considerably worse, and the waves and the wind built throughout the night, and it was proving too much for the single reef jib that I had out, and Wave Rover was getting overpowered. So at first light this morning, I brought the sail down and I deployed the series drogue. The series drogue then brought the stern into the weather and the wind, and now Wave Rover is safe. We're making about 1.5 knots south. It slowed us down. Under any other configuration, we'd be making at least 6 knots south. So this will buy us about 24 hours for conditions to mitigate, and hopefully we can get some sail back up then. But right now, conditions are far too dangerous for Wave Rover to attempt to close in on the island and make it to a port. So we'll step outside really briefly because there are breaking waves, and we'll take a quick look at what the seas look like, and we'll take just a really quick look at the series drogue. There's not much to see. It's just a bridle that's going into the water, and the steering gear, the Mark III, I've taken the Vane off because we don't need any extra strain. And even with no sails up, when the wind gusts, and it's gusting over 40, when it gusts, you can just feel the whole boat shudder. And I'm not sure if the camera microphone is picking this up, but you can I can hear the wind just wailing in the background here. Anyway, we'll take a quick look outside. So the boat is an absolute mess right now. I was asleep in the bunk, and we got hit by a rogue wave, and the boat was pushed to its side, and we were heeled over at a pretty good angle, and the hatch opened and water came in. So now it's the morning of day 13. Last night was a good night. We had about 3 contacts that had a closest point of approach of less than 2 miles. I hailed all of them on VHF, and all 3 responded quickly, and they identified my position. They could see my navigation lights. I'm doing this at 3 miles because I'm finding if it's any farther than 3 miles, they just have too much difficulty trying to find my navigation lights. And 3 miles gives enough time for everybody to maneuver if they need to avoid any collision. So that's the good news. The bad news was about 2 o'clock in the morning. We got hit by a rogue wave on the port side, and it pushed Wave Rover. It heeled her right over more than 45 degrees. And at the same time, the force of the breaking wave opened the hatch. And this is the first time the hatch has ever been opened. Like it always just stays shut, just with gravity. Even in the hurricane, it stayed shut. But this time, the water probably at the angle we were heeled at, the force of the breaking wave, it forced the hatch open just a little bit, just enough to send about a barrel of water into the cabin. And I was sleeping on the starboard bunk, and this is where the majority of the water landed. This is just totally soaked, and the water is literally dripping from the sleeping bag. So, and it's surprisingly cold here in the Canaries, especially with this depression that was going through that brought the gale. So, yeah, it was a cold night. It was a cold, wet night. So I ended up immediately trying to find out where the water came in, because you've got to remember it's 2 in the morning, it's dark, I'm being woken up from a sleep. I first of all checked all the ports, and they were all sound. I checked the cabin sides. It was sound. I mean, the noise from this breaking wave was extraordinary. So I thought there was structural damage. And then closer look, you know, I determined it was most likely the hatch. And the hatch was closed at this point because it was only briefly opened. But now, after that, I secured the hatch completely. There's a proper securing mechanism I use. Then I started pumping out the boat with the bilge pump. And I started pumping, and I got about halfway through the process of pumping the water out of the boat when the pumping mechanism, this portion, separated from this rubber portion. And, you know, this was, like I said, very early in the morning. So then I had to get my tools out, pull the pump apart. Now, I've never pulled one of those apart before. They're really quite simple once you get them apart, very simple. And I saw what the problem was. The bolt had worked itself loose. I was able to put it back through, tighten it up, and then get the pump back in motion. It took about 20 minutes to get that done. You gotta remember, there's a lot of motion and it's dark. So I got the rest of the boat pumped out. Now this morning, the conditions have improved quite a bit. The wind is probably only 15, maybe 18 knots, and the seas have died down. There's no more breaking waves at the top of the waves themselves. Now they're just waves maybe in the 2 to 3 meter category. I'm going to hoist some sails shortly. I'll hove to, and then when I'm hove to, I'll recover the drogue, and then when the drogue is recovered, I'll set course then for the marina I'm heading for, and I'll also try to get the outboard out. That's always been the critical thing. I mean, even during the storm, I could have sailed to the marina, but the marina has an entrance it's only 100 feet wide, and I'll be going to windward to get in through that entrance. It's simply not big enough to sail into, which they frown upon anyway. So I have to get the outboard tacked onto the stern, and that's the problem, because with waves like this, it'll just swamp the outboard. So that's why I've been using the drogue to slow me down and not shoot past the position. I'm still about 30 miles away from the marina, so a combination of sailing there, and then in the last mile or two I'll turn on the outboard and try to keep it from getting swamped. Hopefully as the day goes on, the seas will flatten out a bit, and that would be even better. That'll make things so much easier. Anyway, I'll keep you posted.
If you like this video, the best way to help me is by subscribing, sharing, and watching the videos of my new channel, Rover's Rest. In Rover's Rest, I continue with my philosophy of self-sufficiency and independence. There are links to Rover's Rest at the end of this video, as well as in the video description.